Okay, welcome to our next little chat, this one on circulation. I want you to think about this for a minute. Your mouth takes food into your body, your digestive tract breaks it down. Your lungs bring oxygen in. Your cells need fuel and oxygen in order to do their work. But how do these things get to each cell in your body? How are carbon dioxide and other waste products eliminated? Aquatic animals whose bodies are not very complex, like a sponge, may rely solely on diffusion for these tasks. But most animals rely on a circulatory system for this. From simple to complex, let's take a look at all of these systems. Remember, get your page ready for notes, wide right, skinny left, and I'll see you on the next slide. As we said in the introduction, sponges have no circulatory system. They rely solely on diffusion for oxygen going in, carbon dioxide going out, waste products going out, and for the movement of nutrients around in their body. They rely solely on diffusion. Very, very simple animals. Echinoderms, like the starfish, as one example, have a water vascular system, filling their tube feet, but they again depend on diffusion to move oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nutrients around in their body. In this picture you see the tube feet of the starfish, the little white things, and the mouth opening to the gastrovascular cavity in the middle. In this section, though, we're going to focus on organisms that have circulatory systems with specialized fluids that transport carbon dioxide and nutrients. Open circulatory systems are found in all arthropods, invertebrates with jointed legs. Arthropods include insects, all insects, arachnids, crustaceans, centipedes, and millipedes. And you see a lot of them in the picture here. Mollusks, like snails, clams, scallops, and slugs, also have open circulatory systems. A fluid called hemolymph is partially contained in the organism's body. Muscular movements of the animal tend to pump fluid into sinuses or cavities in the body. From there, oxygen and nutrients and carbon dioxide diffuse in and out of body tissue. In this diagram, you can see how an open system on the left in the grasshopper works in comparison to the closed system that we're going to be talking about in the next few slides. So if you take a look at the grasshopper, you can see that the heart moves hemolymph, or this fluid, this blood-like fluid, into the cavities in the body, and from there it diffuses out to body cells, and wastes are diffused in. Closed circulatory systems are found in larger, more active invertebrates such as annelids, earthworms are one example of that, and some mollusks, specifically cephalopods. Cephalopods are mollusks with their head on their feet, like squid and octopus. Also, all vertebrates, every animal with a backbone has a closed circulatory system. Fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. In a closed system, blood circulates entirely within the system. Arteries, veins, and capillaries are found throughout the body. Blood carries oxygen, carbon dioxide, and nutrients that diffuse across the capillary walls only at the cellular level. Arteries and veins transport blood to and from the capillaries. A heart or a heart-like organ forces blood through these vessels. Because the system is entirely closed, it can be pumped under high pressure and circulated much more efficiently. In the diagram here, you see a closed system in an annelid, an earthworm, and we're going to be looking at that in a couple of weeks, up close and personal. As chordates evolved, more complex organ systems and more efficient channels for internal transportation developed. There are two main types of circulatory systems, closed circulatory systems, single loop and double loop. But before we look at those systems, let's review some basics about the heart and its parts. First, remember that the single and double loop systems are only closed systems. Closed systems have a heart. Okay, always closed, have a heart. Now, heart parts include the atrium, which receives blood, and you see it here at the top. Remember when we looked at the chicken heart, the atria are at the top. Ventricles, which pump blood out, and you see it here on the bottom. So it pumps blood either to the lungs or to the body. And blood vessels. Now, let's talk for a minute about blood vessels. There are three kinds. Veins go towards the heart. Veins are usually shown in blue because typically they carry unoxygenated blood, but not all the time. Veins go to the heart, okay? Either from the body or from the lungs. They go to the heart. Arteries go away from the heart, and we see the main aorta or artery here. Okay, arteries are always shown in red. So arteries away, veins too. Capillaries connect the arteries to the veins at the cellular level. They are very, very tiny. At the smallest, they are 1 cell thick. They're microscopic, and they go near each and every single cell in your body. That is pretty amazing, I think. Now, most vertebrates with gills have a single loop circulatory system. And remember, vertebrates with gills are fish and tadpoles for the most part. In this system, as its name, blood flows in a single loop through the heart in one direction only. Okay, the heart has two chambers, and as we said, blood flows in one direction. If you take a look at the little green sort of arrow there with the ball at the end, it goes from the gills, where it picked up oxygen, it flows to the body, and then into the capillaries, then back to the veins, and finally back to the heart, where it enters the atrium, flows into the ventricle, and it's pumped to the gills to get rid of carbon dioxide and pick up more oxygen. So a pretty simple system there. The double loop circulatory system, as the name suggests, in this system, blood travels in two loops. What a nice, efficient name. So let's take a loop at that. Double loop systems are found in almost all vertebrates with lungs. These animals tend to be more active, and more activity needs a larger capillary network, and a larger capillary network needs a larger, more efficient pump or heart to move the blood around. So the double loop system has evolved. The first double loop systems were three-chambered, with oxygenated and deoxygenated blood mixing in the ventricles, as you see in the two diagrams over to the right. While this isn't the best, it was a definite improvement over the single loop for animals. And as you can see, blood flows in two directions, in and out of the heart. So if you were to follow the path of a blood cell in a double loop system, it would look something like this. A blood cell with a carbon dioxide molecule would move from the heart to the lungs, where it gives up its carbon dioxide and picks up oxygen. It travels back to the heart, and it's then pumped out to body cells, where it gives up its oxygen and collects carbon dioxide, finally traveling back to the heart once more to start the cycle all over again. And we're going to take a look at this cycle in a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. So amphibians and reptiles have a three-chambered heart, where oxygenated and unoxygenated blood mix in the one ventricle down at the bottom. But let's take a look at the four-chambered heart. The mammalian avian heart has evolved into a true working miracle. Mammalian meaning mammal, avian meaning birds. From the two-chambered heart we talked about first, partitions evolved as we saw in the last slide. This eventually divided into two chambers, and then into four, it divided the two chambers into four true chambers that are actually two parallel pumps working next to each other. So that's pretty amazing. In the amphibian and reptile hearts, it still is one pump, but in the four-chambered heart, it is literally two separate pumps. In this system, oxygen-rich blood is totally separated from oxygen-poor blood to maximize the amount of oxygen the blood receives. And in the diagram above, you can clearly see the two loops that a drop of blood would take. And we've moved the lungs out to the side, so you can definitely see the two loops that blood takes. So if we follow the path, starting at number 1 in the right ventricle, blood flows into the lungs through the pulmonary arteries. Remember, arteries go away from the heart, where number 2 is, and into the capillaries in the lungs. Flowing into the pulmonary veins, it goes back into the heart in the left atrium, number 4. And then into the left ventricle, number 5. Remember, arteries go away, veins toward, and the word pulmonary means it has to do with lungs. So the left ventricle now forcibly contracts really hard, sending blood into the aorta, number 6, or the main artery that leads out to the body cells through smaller and smaller arteries until they become capillaries at number 7 in the upper body and number 8 in the lower body, where oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged. If I continue this path, blood flows into larger and larger veins until it comes back at 9 and 10 to the heart from the upper vena cava or main vein and the lower vena cava or lower vein. And it goes into the right atrium at 11, and it starts this cycle all over again. It's really pretty amazing. Now, don't stress and raise your heart rate over this, though. You don't need to know all of this for the test. I do expect you to know the main parts of the double loop as we noted on the last slide, like atrium, ventricle, arteries, capillaries, and veins. But I put this slide in because I wanted to show how very, very cool the mammalian avian heart is, as you saw in your chicken heart. It really is miraculous. So let's take a look at these closed systems all together and kind of make sense of them, okay? Because we've talked about a lot here. Fish, earthworms, squid, and octopi have single-loop circulatory systems. The systems have two chambers, one atrium, one ventricle, and the heart pumps oxygen-poor blood on its way to the gills where it picks up oxygen. Amphibians, like frogs, toads, salamanders, and caecilians, have a three-chambered heart with two atria and one ventricle. Oxygen-rich and poor blood mix in the ventricle, so what goes out to the body is not fully oxygenated. Reptiles, like this chameleon, also have a three-chambered heart like amphibians, but the ventricle is partially divided. Reptiles include turtles, tortoises, snakes, lizards, alligators, and more. And so, while they still get a mix of oxygenated and unoxygenated blood, it's a little bit better than it is for amphibians. And lastly, we have mammals and birds, mammalian and avian species. These guys have four distinct heart chambers, which act as parallel pumps with no mixing of oxygenated and unoxygenated blood. So the evolution of the heart, again, is pretty amazing to look at. And the heart isn't the only thing that has evolved, as we've been talking about all along. So, what do you need to take away from this presentation? Well, you need to be able to compare and contrast how open and closed circulatory systems work. You need to be able to give examples of which animals have which types of systems. You need to be able to describe the two patterns of circulation found in vertebrate animals. And you need to be able to describe the main parts of the heart, and the main parts of the circulatory system, including where they're found and what they do.